for amputation, or it's a lower extremity or upper extremity for orthotics. We always have to get a negative cast. So to get the negative cast, you can use fiberglass, you can use plaster, and I typically like fiberglass because it's cleaner, it's quicker, and the cast is more durable, so that if it gets bumped, it doesn't get damaged. So just like casting a broken limb, kind of the same principle, it's just I use a whole lot less of it. So seeing Cassidy here today, Cassidy's got drop foot, whether you knew it or not. She's got drop foot. So one of the things that I need to do is evaluate what am I doing with the brace. And I can do that with manual muscle testing and range of motion testing. But once I have determined, what type of a brace I'm making, I need to get as accurate of a cast as I can get that has the optimal alignment in the foot and the ankle, which just literally translates to less work on my end when I'm making modifications to the cast. So that negative cast I will fill with plaster to create a positive mold, and then I will physically make changes to that positive mold. I will remove material from areas that I want to push on. I will add material from, around the malleoli so that I'm not applying pressure. And anything that is not lined up right in the foot and the ankle, I have to correct in the cast. So that just means I have to make more changes to it, which more than likely will translate to a less accurately fitting orthosis when I'm done. So in that, I align the foot and the ankle, so I'm correcting for varus and valgus at the ankle, pronation and supination in the forefoot, and inversion and eversion in the foot when I'm actually taking the cast. You're going to need to slide forward just a little bit. Perfect. Perfect. All right. So typically what I do when I'm casting for an AFO is I cast up to about the fibular head, because I know that I'm not going, to the fibular head, and certainly not going higher unless I'm doing something that's incorporating the knee, and then I'm into a knee ankle foot orthosis, or KAFO. And if you haven't figured out already, we like to take the first letter. So I like to joke that I could cast you from your head all the way to your toes by creating a CTLSOHKAFO. Cervical, thoracic, lumbar, sacral, hip, knee, ankle, foot orthosis. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Cassidy, I'm going to wrap her up some cellophane here so that I don't stick to her, and we can throw her in the fridge and keep her fresh for a week. You guys are the only people that ever laugh at that. And I think it's just out of obligation or something. That and people actually pay to be wrapped up in cellophane for weight loss. Alright, so just wrap her up so we keep her clean. And then, since I'm trying not to stick to her, that's the cellophane, I need something that I can actually stick my cast to. So I use the nylon, and I also use some surgical tube because it is something that's very easy for me to modify back out of my cast, and it gives me something to run that cast saw against. Now the nature of a cast saw, any soft tissues, it will vibrate rather than cut through. Cassidy, if you would, I'm going to have you hang on to that. But in the nature of my business, most everybody I deal with, it has drop foot because of diabetes, neuropathy, or, it can be strokes and stuff. But most of my people are not good vascular and don't have good healing, so I try never to touch them with anything that will so much as break their skin. Alright, so I've got her wrapped. I've got my fiberglass casting tape. This is got a resin that is embedded into the fabric itself, and as soon as I open it, it will start setting off. So it is air catalyzed, So air is the catalyst to make it set up, and it's water promoted. So I get it wet, and water just speeds it up. So without the water, it'd take about 15 minutes to set up. But with the water, it'll take about 3 to 4. And again, so I'm going to wrap her up about her fibular head. And Cassidy is being really helpful. So she's actually holding her foot in neutral, which nobody ever does. And also, Cassidy doesn't have a lot of redundant tissues. So I don't really have to worry about roping her tissues off or creating, you know, high and low spots by compressing our tissues too much with the casting tape. But normally those are things that I really pay attention to, is how much force I'm putting on the casting material itself so that I'm not pitting the tissues or you know, essentially making my cast all wavy. And then you get a massage included.
Do you wrap it pretty tight then?
It depends on the tissue type. So if I've got somebody who's, you know, got very soft tissues or has got pitting edema, then no, I don't wrap it tight at all. If I've got somebody who's got good muscle tone, then yeah, I will wrap it pretty tight because I really can't compress the tissues. All right, so I'm gonna have you just relax your leg for me. There you go. All right, so what I'm gonna do, because I want to find the areas that I can utilize to control, is when I hold her, I've got a routine, and whether it's right leg or left leg, I always take my hand and I use the meat of my thumb to kind of get into that long arch of the foot. And then I take my forefinger and my thumb and I come beside her calcaneus, and I'm kind of marking with the the webbing between my thumb and index finger, and I'm kind of getting into that subtalar region, the region in between the talus and the calcaneus. And then I use my index finger of the same hand, and I just lock in on each side of her calcaneus. And then I take my other hand and I come into the metatarsal arch, so that I'm marking my different landmarks. And then I come between the base and the head of the 5th metatarsal, and I mark those as well. And then I hold her into as neutral position as I can get. And I mean neutral in varus valgus, plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, inversion, eversion, pronation, supination. Try to hit everything. And then we just rate and wait. That's almost done. You probably felt to get one.
Mm-hmm. When you first put it on, I felt that it was warm, but was that because of this or because the water was?
It's because the water was
okay.
warmer. The temperature of the water will actually affect how fast it sets up as well. And since I'm a rather impatient person, I always use warm water because it sets it off much faster. And you can probably feel it's getting hard.
Yeah.
All right, and it's pretty well set up. All right, and we take our cast off. There you go. You're going to feel a vibration. If we're really lucky, we'll take it off and there won't be any blood.
Is he just leaving us
See, I don't know if you can see this, but it didn't even cut the nylon all the way, so. are the worst scissors ever. There. Take that out. And then the fiberglass allows me to, you know, just flex that out and then it goes right back into its shape. So then I've got a mold of Cassidy's foot here. Actually did pretty good. I got a little bit of supination in there in the forefoot, but not too shabby. You guys see it first. Alright. And then you're going to want to slide your legs over that way before you get up so that you don't get into the fiberglass.
Okay.
But then what I'll do is I'll tape that thing together and make it all intact so that it holds together, and then I'll fill it full of plaster and build off of that.
Cool. So how do you know to make the adjustments then?
How
How do you know to make the adjustments? Or is that when you start doing your pressure?
Yeah, so, and actually if you guys want to, you know, kind of pass around and kind of see the different landmarks I was talking about. So when I'm looking at this right now, really the only thing, I've got a pretty, I'm about 90 degrees on my dorsiflexion, plantar flexion. I'm neutral on my, you know, varus valgus. And really the only thing I'm seeing is that I, you know, kind of supinated her forefoot a little bit. And, but you guys can actually look at that and you can kind of see what I was looking for. So, you know, if I've got too much supination in the forefoot, you know, I get out to late stance, she's going to start dropping, you know, I'm going to start noticing some knee valgus. And she's going to be unstable to the inside. And vice versa, same thing. So, some of that I can correct before I even pour it. So I can take this guy and kind of change the shape of the cast before I, you know, actually attach it back together. And then some of it, you know, if it's too much or I can't quite get what I want, once I pour it full of plaster and strip off this cast, then I've got my positive mold. Then I go in there and literally add material or carve away material to get the angles that I'm looking for. But kind of like I said in the beginning, the more changes I have to make in the modifications when I'm actually, you know, adding or taking increased function so much, and they make things so much easier for the amputee, that I literally look for a reason why can't I do a microprocessor. Whether that's a knee or a foot, it doesn't matter. I have seen more than once a K2 ambulator with a microprocessor knee turn into a high-functioning K3 ambulator just because of the knee. So the knee, the prosthetic knee itself, takes, I can't remember, so I'm going to go through each of them, but it registers, it reads knee angle, so the flexion angle. It reads the angle in relation to the ground. It reads how much weight, amputee weight, is being applied through the device. It reads how much of that is coming from the posterior, or the heel of the prosthetic. How much of it is coming from the toe, or the anterior. And then it's also reading how fast it's traveling through space. So it's taking all of those readings. Oh, and also how fast the knee angle is changing. So not just the angle, but the rate at which it changes. But it takes all of those readings 500 times every single second. So this knee literally knows if the amputee has stumbled. It knows if it's interrupted, you know, it's been interrupted in its cycle, which is a signal for it that something's going wrong. So it goes into a high stance resistance. In other words, it goes really stiff. So the amputee can press into it and get their other foot up underneath it.
Okay, hey Brent, if I can, for just a second, The other day, I think we were talking, we talked a little bit about the microprocessor, and we used the example of the C-leg. So what Brent is showing is called a Rio knee, and the resistance is generated by a different mechanism. But I think what's important for you guys to understand, as opposed to a C-leg, which has exactly 3 states, it's got a free swinging state, high knee flexion resistance, and then locked in case the battery runs out or something. The Rio knee has got continuous resistance, so it more resembles the actual knee stiffness that's generated by your muscles. And so this is really cool. What Brant was describing is that there's about 8 sources of input that go, which are really like proprioceptive senses, that are going into controlling the knee stiffness. And that's the only source of output is the knee stiffness. But there's about 8 different sensations, if you will. They're biomechanical variables, but about 8 different things that are all inputting into what the knee stiffness is going to be on that knee.
Alright, so on my iPad I've just logged into this knee. So this knee and my iPad are actually communicating now. And in this, there is, there are actually training exercises. So there are literally little login, little pieces, little programs that you can jump into. Hold that. So what this is literally doing right now is just registering how much weight I'm applying to the knee itself.
Sorry.
And so you can, when you're actually talking to an amputee and you're like, okay, you need to shift your weight back onto the prosthetic. And they're like, well, I am. And you're like, no, you're not. Well, you can literally get on there and teach them how to actually balance out their weight.
Brent, could you move a little closer to Katie so I could get a view of both at the same time? Okay, there you are.
And I don't do physical therapy, but I do utilize this a lot. So you can actually teach them how to do that, how much weight they are putting through it, and that helps with the weight shift just in gait. And then, oh yeah, and each one of these, it'll actually pop up and take you to a little YouTube video if you want to know, actually how am I supposed to teach them how to do this? So, shifting the weight forward and backward. I mean, it's pretty important with gait, right? So, what we're doing is we're literally teaching them how to shift through their weight. So it's actually, tracking how much weight we're shifting through the prosthetic.
Could they do this like at home?
They can use
Yeah. So Brant, you can, if you have another type of device like an iPhone, the patient can have it so they can practice these.
Yeah,
well, they could, if they have a pad, great, but they could do it on their phone
they can
too,
do it on
right?
their iPhone, their iPad, any iOS device can access the knee. It does not utilize any Android devices, and that's for security. It will only work through iOS. So, but we always talk about getting an individual in late stance to utilize that prosthetic foot to help propel them forward. So you actually teach them how to bounce into that foot, how to actually physically load that prosthetic foot, because that prosthetic foot stores energy. So you put weight into it, it wants to push back. So we're teaching them how to do that. Pretty much not going to cause it an issue. I wouldn't want to go do a Tough Mudder or a Spartan race with it, but as Dr. Hackney had said, we have found that our K4 ambulators, they don't get benefit out of it. I mean, they're strong enough, functional enough, balanced enough that they do better with a hydraulic, S&S, swing and stance. They do better with this than they do with the microprocessor. They don't need something monitoring them all the time. Don't get me wrong, they'll do just fine with it, but they don't need it. It's not medically necessary. I have found the vast majority of them, I'll bring them in for that trial, they don't want it. They want their hydraulic S&S back. So, but 3 years is covered by the manufacturer. So barring submersion, the manufacturer will replace it. Now, accidents happen. I had a gentleman that was taking his grandkids fishing, fell off the boat dock, was wearing one of these. Went in. Actually, it kept working, but called the manufacturer, told them what happened. They sent him out a loaner, brought it back, fixed it. There was damage. The knee was still functioning. How long it would have functioned, I don't know. But the manufacturer did stand behind it and fix it.
Over the residual limb. And so, and then next, there's the other side. This is called a bone ring because that's what it used to be made out of at one point. And then you can do the same thing with the second layer. Okay, does anybody want to try that out?
Sure, I'll try it.
Okay, great. Who said that? That's Katie?
You take this one
No,
off?
no,
Oh,
that's okay. Here, I've got another one set up for you.
You talked up like a rabbit.
There you go.
I'll do it.
Good job,
Good job, Oh, okay. Oh.
Oh.
We'll see how this goes.
Okay, no, you don't push, okay, no, this is actually a good point. So you don't push it because what lives here? This is the post-surgical incision, and that's a big surgery. So you don't want to put that, you want to touch it there and then you unroll it. So, okay, that's good. And now hold this in one hand and unroll it onto there with the other hand as you feed it over. That's it. Exactly. Very good. Okay, now do the same thing, put it over. That's right, just like that.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, this is the best of us.
Nope.
And I was about to do that.
There you go, now you got it. And then keep going, almost all the way to the end. Because you want this to be pulling the incision together, right? Okay, even a little more. There, that's good. Okay, now you do the same process. So you'll have to hold on to that with one hand and unroll it with the other. Yeah, it's
Oh, yeah.
harder than you think.